Frogun is an indie title that seems to be somewhat of a sleeper hit. It's one of those games that you always seem to hear about, but it never leaves enough of an impression on people to remain in their minds. Maybe you've seen it as a filler game at GDQ, or as a part of a banner for some indie wankfest. Personally, I learned about it when it won VGA 2022's Best Game That Nobody Played award. Looking at the cover image, it's clear why it won. It stars an underage cartoon girl, who probably is the subject of some very questionable pics on DeviantArt. This is, of course, in addition to being a rather video game that's a passion project from a very small team, and thus free from the trappings of the pretentious slop that have come to dominate the indie scene recently. Anyway, I fucking played it, and I have to say, this is pretty good. It's got its rough edges, but if you want some tight platforming with a gimmick and lots of charm, look no further, because this game has both in spades. The thing that immediately catches the eye is the game's distinctive look. It's a game that wears its inspiration on its sleeve, that being the low-poly, highly geometric design that was the hallmark of early 3D games in the 5th generation of consoles. There's even a set of filters meant to emulate the blending effect and analog rendering that was the hallmark of older displays. However, your mileage may vary. I didn't particularly enjoy the effect and much prefer clean, high-resolution visuals, but I'm glad that they're there. Maybe they'll tickle someone's fancy, who knows. Beyond that, I have to say that the game itself is absolutely gorgeous. I might just be a sucker for high-res, low-poly stuff, but everything is so sharp, crisp, and well-defined that it is a feast for the eyes. The game has great use of color as well, reminding me a lot of Spyro the Dragon's masterful use of color theory. But, in addition to looking good, Frogun plays very good as well. The concept is simple. Get to the end of each level while using your amphibian-shaped grappling implement, a toad pistol, if you will. That's pretty much it. You run, you jump, you grapple, all in varying amounts for all of the game's levels. It's beautiful in its simplicity. Of course, I'm being very generous when I call Renata waddling around on her stubby little girl legs running. It's not a big issue though. Even though you move at a snail's pace when running, the levels are very compact. They're masterclasses in design, really. In a sense, the slow walking speed seems to encourage you to look for creative ways to go fast, and each level has its own time trial emblem to get that slowly trains your mind to see beyond the intended path and realize that you can skip all sorts of obstacles in geometry with a bit of creative thinking. The addition of collectibles in the form of gems, notes, and obsidian skulls, however, does give an incentive to put the brakes on cheesing the levels and take on the specific challenges within them. Usually, you'll play through a level at least twice, once to collect everything, and once to do the time attack / no death run. These go hand in hand. It's actually really satisfying progression. You learn the level while collecting all the items, and then you use everything you've learned to make the level your bitch. Besides, your third eye isn't going to awaken instantly. The game has a very smooth difficulty curve, and for much of the first 3 worlds, you're just going to be getting used to the controls and how the game generally plays. In fact, I'd say the difficulty curve is a bit too smooth. For the first 3 worlds out of 7, I thought Frogun was going to be one of those bullshit wholesome cozy Reddit games where challenge is non-existent and you just walk from point A to point B to enjoy the eye candy. However, the game really starts kicking into high gear around World 4, where enemies and hazards become too numerous to simply damage boost through, and the game starts demanding that you do some pretty precise platforming and tricky grapple chains. It's here where the game really shines, and the infinite lives and mostly forgiving checkpoints means that failure is rarely frustrating. You simply grab your gun and try to do it better the next time around. Or pull off a clutch maneuver that skips half the level. Whichever works. The game isn't all sunshine and roses, though. There are some pretty questionable design decisions that drag down the experience. For instance, you can't grapple to a surface if you're less than a 45-degree angle from it, but the targeting reticle gives no indication that a grapple will fail, leading to some questionable deaths at times, especially once the game starts introducing curved walls. There's a 2-player mode, but it's offline only, and it seems that it's pretty half-baked from what I could tell. However, as a fun little extra and not part of the core experience, I'm glad that it's at least present. The boss battles are by far the weakest part of the game. You'd think that in the year of our Lord Jesus Christ, 2022, people would have realized that bosses that follow the formula of run around jacking off until my giant glaring fuck me sign shows up is something that nobody wants. Especially since running around in a circle is actually an effective tactic. Like, yeah, I get it. Frogun is specifically trying to evoke memories of an era of games that aren't really made anymore. I just think that trying to emulate even the bad parts is a little lazy. Another game that tried something similar is Bug Fables. You look at Bug Fables and it's clear that it wants to be a Paper Mario retread. However, rather than just reskinning its inspiration, it made solid efforts to improve the formula with a bigger party, tighter restrictions on player power to prevent them from trivializing the game via level up, and more of a mind for allowing creative synergies and tactics with the medal system compared to Paper Mario's badges. This mindfulness towards replicating what people loved while innovating what people didn't was what made Bug Fables such an amazing game. It hurts even more in Frogun because there are two post-game bosses which are excellent and creative. One is a frantic dash to collect all of the frog babies while their dad chases you, and the other is needing to grapple all of a spherical wizard's floating crystals before he refreshes them to make him vulnerable. Both of these were, well, I wouldn't exactly say amazing, but they were fights that kept me on my toes and forced me to engage with the game other than just simply holding left with my dick in my hand with the occasional jump to spice things up. Also, I feel like the coins were awkwardly implemented. Each level has literally hundreds of coins to collect, and you need to get every single one if you want to have a complete emblem for that level. I don't mind their inclusion, but I think that tying collecting every single one to 100% completion isn't a good thing to have. Some levels are designed such that it's very difficult or even impossible to backtrack, and it really does suck having to waddle all the way back through a level when you miss just a single coin. Keep in mind that, on launch, you'd lose your coins if you died, making you need to collect them all without messing up once. Thank goodness a patch changed this so that collectibles remain in your inventory if you die, sans the obsidian skulls, because half the challenge of collecting them is also safely getting back to the main path. Were it not for that, I would have quickly discarded the idea of ever going out of my way to collect coins. Collecting a coin in a video game is supposed to be a microscopic triumph that gives the player a dopamine hit by hearing a pleasant jingle accompanied by a number going up. As it is now, they feel more like an obligation than anything that brings joy. They're already used to purchase new hats and gallery items. I think that this would have been just fine as their only use, especially since neither hats nor gallery pictures have any impact on actual gameplay. You can't even buy everything in normal progression anyway. As a single run through the entire game, getting every single coin will only net you enough to buy most of the hats. And based on my calculations, you need to grind an additional 2 hours at optimal efficiency to afford the gallery items. It's kind of ridiculous how much the Hatter charges for literal images. I mean, who'd pay 1,000 gold coins for a JPEG? I will say though, coins were implemented in a really cool way for the 2, out of 42 levels mind you, of the game where you play as Jake the Treasure Hunter, Renata's rival. He shows up once in each world as a race, which, again, is a way the developer challenges the player to move fast and skip obstacles. These are really fun. Although it does suck having to essentially replay the level after you win the race if you want to get all the collectibles. Thank God there's always a door at the finish line that takes you right back to the start, because needing to backtrack twice would be even more frustrating. Anyway, 2 of the post-game levels allow you to play as Jake, who is mechanically identical to Renata, except in one huge way. You see, instead of having a set amount of health points, Jake's health is represented as a percentage that constantly ticks down. How do you restore it? By doing what a treasure hunter does best: collecting coins. This is brilliant, and I'm shocked that it wasn't used more in the main game. I would have easily taken levels like these over the racing levels, because they push you to reprioritize your movement. You begin to think like a treasure hunter. You say, this gap looks pretty dicey, but there's a lot of coins on that ledge that I could really use at the moment. It's a really fun mechanic that gives the player a reason to collect coins quickly and efficiently. It's something that I hope appears more often in the sequel, along with a better collection sound, because holy hell, is it grating on the ears at the default volume. Overall, Frogun is a delightful little experience that delivers exactly what it promises. I wouldn't call it a must-play, but it's definitely a hidden gem that'll certainly give you your money's worth if you like the genre. It's a solid platformer, with a gimmick that truly elevates it and turns it into something special. It's a labor of love by a close-knit group of passionate developers, and it shows. Even though it has some flaws, I have to respect the sheer commitment to the vision and a desire to recapture what people loved about that era of video games. And it seems like the team was successful, as the sequel doesn't even need to resort to Kickstarter for funding, and the baggage that comes with that. Everything released so far about it seems to imply that it's going to add a lot more depth to the core gameplay, so I'm eager to see how the devs' efforts play out in practice. It's certainly on my radar now, at least. I give Frogun a B+ rating. Definitely a good use of your time and money, but it has just enough holding it back to prevent it from being something really special. Perhaps the sequel will change this, perhaps not. Until then, if you like platforming and low-poly Kino, you should definitely at least check out this riveting game.